Good morning. Welcome to day 23 of our Art of Allowing Challenge. And today I'm going to take some time to respond to a question that was posed in the group. And the reason I want to do this is because that's what this is all about. If we're just consuming and the questions that we have aren't being answered and we're not actually learning and hence growing, then it somewhat defeats the purpose. And so I'm going to do my best to respond and hopefully answer the questions that we have. And the first question is, how do you actually, and this was in response to yesterday's message. And so the first question is, how do you actually not become an emotional prisoner to your emotions? So how do you actually not become an emotional prisoner to your emotions? And this was in response to talking about how we allow events to dictate how we should feel about them. Somebody does something, they cut you off in traffic, you become an emotional prisoner. You're upset, you're mad, you're cynical. The next question is, how do you truly surrender something without suppressing the fact that it's having a physical effect on your body? And this touches on the connection between the mind and the body and how things that we things that we think about can somehow manifest into physical responses. Just like you think about squeezing a lemon or a lime in your mouth and you start to salivate, or you may have some type of sexual urge and that produces results. It's no different than the mind. When you have negative thoughts or anxiety, you start sweating. It's no different. The next question is, how do you allow yourself to fully see reality, acknowledge the emotions and physical reactions that come with it, surrender it, and not be ruled by it? And then how do you move through it and come out stronger rather than becoming captive to it? Allow, but how? So I guess the one, if I had to summarize this, the question she's asking is, how do you actually allow? And I think it's a great question because it speaks to the heart of why and what we're doing. So the first thing I'll say is, this is not a dumb question. It's not a unique question. I think, in fact, a lot of people think about this, but don't really have the boldness maybe to speak on it. I know I thought about it before we started this challenge, and I still think about it. I still have moments of allowing and surrendering and submitting and realizing that it's not a one-time thing. It's a practice. That's the first thing we got to clear up, okay? The second thing is, most of the emotions that hold us captive, they weren't created in that moment. They were actually reinforced through repetition. And I'll give you an example. The first time you drive and somebody cuts you off and you're with a friend who you care about, you might not respond. If it happens again and again, and the person that cuts you off is a woman or someone who is of a specific race or ethnicity, and it constantly keeps happening, now you attach meaning to that event. Now you say, these white men always cut me off, or these people with this particular car always cut me off, or you identify with maybe the car that you're driving. But something happens that turns that one-time event into a habit, which turns into a personality. And so it's not the one time, it's the repetition. And so reversing it is going to require repetition. And when that thing happens, I'll give you an example of me. Yesterday, I had a situation at my house where somebody ate my food, well, some of my food. And my first response was irritation and borderline anger. And that was my response because I knew it was going to happen. And I stepped away and I came back and it happened. Now, if this person was a visitor in my house who was dying, would I have responded the same way? If this person was someone I wanted to do business with and I needed their approval, would I have responded the same way? So that response was based off of something else. Maybe months of conditioning of people eating my food. Who knows? So the point is, most of the things that we're dealing with right now, they came from the past. And so when we identify these things, it won't be resolved in one situation. It takes practice. So allowing, surrendering, submitting, it's not about letting it go for that moment. It's a constant practice. Let's think about a forest, okay, a big, thick forest. And you got a path through that forest. And if you walk that same trail every day for years, it's going to become like automatic. You don't even have to look it up. You just keep walking. Everything disappears. Your mind and nervous system work the same way. If when you were a child, you were criticized, rejected, or bullied, or you were made to feel unsafe in some type of way, that created an emotional pathway, an emotional trail. And then years later, somebody says or does something that resembles those old experiences, and instantly your body responds. Your heart races. Like she said, she gets these physical responses, maybe stomach tightening, anger. Not because of that moment, but because that moment touched something in you that has been done hundreds of times, tens of times before. And this is one of the reasons why surrendering can feel so difficult. Surrendering is not about making the feeling disappear, because the feeling doesn't disappear. You're going to feel upset. You're going to feel angry. You're going to feel a certain way. What surrendering is allowing the feeling to be present without allowing it to be your identity. And I'm going to break this down because I know that sounds hard to understand. I feel angry. Okay, take a step back. Who feels angry? What part of you is angry? Where did that anger come from? Okay, let's use an example. Somebody tells a woman, like this person that's responding, she's tall. And if I told her, hey, you're tall for a woman, and she's heard that her whole life, you're tall for a woman, you're too tall for a woman, it might trigger an emotional response because it touches on an identity that she's carried for years. But if somebody comes up to her and says, hey, you're pretty short for a woman, it might not affect her the same way because there's no emotional pathway attached to it. If you're a black man and somebody says, you're smart for a black guy, and you've heard this your whole life, that's going to touch you a lot differently if you're a black man and someone says, you're handsome, period. Or someone says, you're intelligent, period. The words, the statement is not what creates the reaction. It's the identification, the identity that we attach to the statement. When they scratch it, it's like an itch. And the same thing happens with rejection, with abandonment, with failure, with inadequacy, with fear, with shame. Over time, we stop saying, I experienced rejection, and we start saying, I am rejection. I am worthless. I am not worthy. We stop talking about the failure that happened, and we start believing I am a failure. We stop saying, I feel fear, and start identifying with the fear and saying, I'm afraid of the dark. I'm afraid of this. Not I feel fear when I am in those situations. And surrender interrupts that. What surrender does is says, no, you are not that person. No, you are not the one who identifies with that. And surrender says, instead of I'm rejected, surrender is saying I'm experiencing the feeling of what it feels like to be rejected, or what it feels like when someone goes through rejection. And that fear, I'm feeling the feeling of fear. Fear is moving through me, because remember, emotions move through you. Emotion is energy in motion, so it has to move. So suppressing it is when you don't give it space to move. Surrender is when you say, move through me freely, because it's going to go. It won't be there forever. When you suppress it, that's when it starts to become your identity. And when you look at scripture, I think that's where the intersection happens. Those of you who know me know that I'm not particularly a quote unquote religious person, but I love how a lot of the things that we read in scripture, it confirms, it validates. It's a testament to what science is saying. And when you look at David, if you go look at the Psalms, some of the hardest books to read are the Psalms. He didn't suppress his emotions. He was practicing surrender back then. He poured out his emotions before God. And those Psalms, I believe they're his journals, but it's filled with fear, with frustration, with confusion, with despair. But yet, he consistently refused to let those emotions become his identity. And something interesting that I noticed, the way that David spoke, and this is Psalm 42, verse 5. He says, "Why are you cast down, O my soul?" Now notice what he's doing here. Notice what he did. He's speaking to his soul. So he is actually observing his soul, almost like a third person. He's acknowledging the condition of his soul without becoming a prisoner or a captive to that. The soul is trouble, but David is not the trouble. The mind is racing, but David is not the racing mind. The emotions are there, but David is not the emotions. And this is the shift that we need to take from identifying ourselves with that emotion or with that feeling to just observing, to go from identification to observation. And the moment you can actually sit or stand or be present and witness that emotion, you're no longer trapped. You're no longer trapped by it. You're no longer trapped inside of it. And now there's space between the person experiencing the emotion and the actual experience of the emotion. That's hard to grasp, right? Let's think about it. When you close your eyes, who's closing your eyes? Your eyes are closed, but there's still something going on in there. When you open your eyes, who's looking? When you look in the mirror, who's looking at you? Okay, you'll say your name, if it's John Doe. Okay, if you're 18 years old today, when you were 3 years old, who was looking at you then? You'll say John Doe, but the body's different. So it's not your body. There's an observer inside that's taking note, that's collecting all these experiences. And that observer is what we call the witness. And the witness is observing everything. The witness is almost indifferent. It doesn't take sides. It just observes. Oh, there's a tree. Oh, we're feeling angry. And so when you can start to sit and observe the anger, the frustration, the irritation, the joy, the happiness, the peace, now you've created the space. The body might still be going through stuff. You might still have the headache and the pain, even the tears. But now you know I am not those things. I am just the one witnessing those things. And because those old emotional pathways were built through repetition, the freedom of being able to witness it is also built through repetition. It won't happen one time. Over time, you start to now disassociate, or if this is even a word, unidentify with those emotions, because you know they're not you. You didn't have these emotions as a child. You look at a child, and that, again, back to Jesus saying, unless you are like a child. A child is not staying with those emotions. But over time, when they keep getting rejected, keep being told no, keep being bullied, now they develop those pathways. So look back to when you were a child. What were those emotional pathways that you developed? People told you weren't good enough. People told you were too fat, too skinny, too tall, too black, too dark, too light. They kept telling you that. And eventually you gave it meaning. And so when you hear it today, you've got the emotional pathway, and the emotional response is automatic. So now the feeling arises and you choose to identify with it. Oh yeah, that's me. So the work that needs to be done is freedom. And freedom comes through repeating a new pattern. And it starts with saying, I am not that person. I am not the fat kid, or the person that they said, was stupid, or whatever it is that you choose to identify with. And when we say we acknowledge reality, what we're saying is what's unfolding right now in front of us. Let's identify it. Let's call it exactly what it is. I missed my flight. That's all that happened. I didn't get on the plane. That's it. Don't give it more of a story. This person has abandoned me, or not abandoned me, but this person has moved on. They've moved on. They didn't abandon me. They just moved on. And surrender is a practice, okay? It's not a moment. And every time you bring that emotion to God, instead of fighting it, suppressing it, or obeying it, you're developing a new pathway. And you might have to surrender that same thing, that same fear, that same doubt 100 times, the same hurt 1,000 times, the same insecurity, the same fear for years, months, days. And not because you're failing, but because you're retraining, you're developing a new mind and a new nervous system. The old ways are done. So this is a practice. So this might be a 30-day challenge, but it's actually a 30-day introduction to a lifetime. Because when we figure out how to dominate the thing that controlled us, now we can experience a different level of peace. Because the emotion may still be there. It might still knock on the door, but it no longer owns the house. It no longer owns the day. And so the questions I have in return are, what identity is that emotion trying to convince you to wear? And you feel angry. What identity is that emotion scratching on when you feel upset? And it usually comes from childhood. Who would I be if I didn't believe or buy into this story? And can I allow this feeling to be here without making it who I am? Is that possible? Because again, true surrender is not saying, oh, this shouldn't be happening. No, it's acknowledging what's in front of you. This is happening. This is here. I feel it. I acknowledge it. I give it to God, but it does not define me. And I know it's paradoxical. And that's just the thing about allowing. You have to fully feel it, fully see it, acknowledge it. But remember that you are larger than any of those feelings. You're larger than any of those fears. So there's a framework that I want to introduce, and it helps to tackle or deal with this whole idea of meditation, surrender. And the first thing is, when it comes, feel it. Don't judge it, just feel it. Okay? I'm upset, whatever it is, and then name it. Name the feeling. You can even write it down. Name the feeling. So if you're feeling upset, you're feeling anxious, don't deny it. And don't even spiritualize it. And don't pretend. David, he said, I'm afraid, I'm hungry, I'm angry, I'm discouraged. Acknowledge the reality. And then you want to notice it. To create the separation, I notice the anxiety rising. I'm the one that notices this. And this is where most people fight, is allowing it. And allowing doesn't mean you got to like it. It just means I don't need this feeling to leave before I can have peace. And I know that's the hardest thing to understand. How can I have peace when I'm angry? It's not about having peace when you're angry. It's about needing the feeling to leave. It's about needing the outcome to be how you want it. I'm upset right now. I need not to be upset. No, I'm okay. I'm upset and I don't need it to go. I can just feel it. And what you're going to notice is the more and more you practice, the less time you're going to sit in those feelings. They won't go away, but they'll come and they'll go a lot faster. For some people who have achieved like a Jesus status or a Buddha status, I don't know, highest level of enlightenment you can achieve, maybe they don't feel those feelings. But when you think about Jesus, even he had feelings. And the next thing is to release. And this is the surrender. And it's not the feeling, it's the outcome and the story. And there's some ways that we can do this just by asking, what am I afraid will happen if I release? What story am I telling myself? What identity am I trying to protect? And biblically, we see this as cast your cares. And that's what she said in her response as well. God cares for you. So cast your cares. The emotion might still be there, but the attachment to it loosens. And the next thing, finally, is to engage. Engage with what's in front of you. What is the next thing that can be done? I missed my flight. Okay, what can you do next? You can't catch the flight that's already gone, so there's no need to engage in it. You can't go back in the past. The only thing you can do is look for another flight. Surrender is not passive, okay? Surrender is not just about doing nothing. It's not about just sitting there and waiting. Because after David did all those things and he cried and he lamented, he got up and acted. After Jesus prayed, he still walked. After Noah trusted God, he still had to build the ark. Allowing is not about doing nothing. It's acting from a place of peace instead of panic. Acting from a place of trust instead of fear. Acting from a place of confidence. So in one sentence, I'll say acknowledge what is happening, witness it without being it or identifying with it. Well, that's not one sentence, but yeah, you get the point. Allow it without resisting, and then release it without trying to control it, and then engage without fear. Feel it, see it, surrender, and move anyway. And I think that's the rhythm. And again, it's not once, it's not twice. We do this every day. And to end, I would strongly recommend to engage in some type of meditative practice, which is actually what I wanted to discuss today. So maybe we'll do that tomorrow. We'll talk about the power, the effect, and the benefits of a consistent meditative practice.